Hello, it's Brad Laurie, or Blockchain Brad. Today I'm talking with Gathar, and I'm specifically speaking with the CEO. His name is Reggie. Reggie, thank you very much for being on the channel today.
Hey, Brad, thanks for having me and great to be here.
Likewise, mate. Now, obviously, you know the deal. I'm quite serious. Some might call me boring Blockchain Brad because I like to get down into the tech. Now, Gathar is something that a lot of people don't know about, Reggie. It's something that a lot of people would perhaps not understand either, with a lot of complexity around merge mining. Let's start with a breakdown from the simple phrases that you stand by. Now, one of them is that you want to be the next era of web monetization. Let's start there. What on earth does it mean to be about web mining, about web monetization and merge mining?
For sure. Let's start, as you said, with that part, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Gather? You know, we started out trying to accomplish one very simple goal, is that we wanted to find an alternative form of monetization for websites and applications, right? So what we do is we provide websites and applications with a basic web miner, right? It's script you put on your website or inside your application via an SDK or whatever it may be. And whoever comes and visits after providing consent is then mining cryptocurrency on your behalf. Whatever is made is then paid out to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming to the other part, merge mining. So a little bit of backstory, so there's some context. Gathar started as version 1 as a pure play web miner last year, right? We have now pivoted to version 2 to include merge mining.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is merge mining? Why did we add it in? Why, right? So merge mining is a process of two different coins being mined at the same time using a similar algorithm, right?
Right. Okay, that's important. Let's reiterate that. So it's two coins using a similar algorithm. That's what sets it apart from other things, and this is why it matters.
Yes. And how does that play into web mining or into Gathar?
Mm-hmm.
Is that we moved from the model of mining other people's coin and not having our own chain at all into building our own blockchain specifically and adding the feature of merge mining. Now, why is this relevant, right? So think about it like this, is that you have all this hash power, all this POW available on the web, on applications, right? What if you're able to share that with other blockchains for security purposes to help against 51% attacks? That's where merge mining is so important. And
right.
That's where
So
it could make
I want to stop you there for a moment. I hope that's okay. Now, for those who don't know, the hash rate itself, let's talk about the imperative of being able to utilize hash rate and what that means for publishers, developers, for any consumers actually that could use Gathar. Hash rate is a big deal in your ecosystem.
Yes, it is. That's the whole thing, is that let's talk about, I'll give you a scenario using two of our partners, right? We have MetaLife, which is a blockchain browser, which is going to be using Gathar to monetize. And we have LuxCore, right? Which is a blockchain that's been around for a while as well. Lux requires hash, right? They require proof of work, POW, just to secure their own chain. MetaLife provides hash, provides POW. It's a simple marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Via merge mining.
And this is the interesting thing, is that when we try to, those who are in the crypto space, we try to find projects that have real utility. Otherwise, we're wasting consumers' time, speculators' time, investors' time, and even the startups' time. Now, you have real utility. That's why I found it interesting. Even though you're not well known, hopefully you do become more known, because you're back mapping from the real value of publishing, of developing. So let's talk about that. Where's the utility in Gathar? How does it all work? And why should someone be paying attention if they're interested in publishing or developing?
I'll start with the utility, right? So what is Gathar used for specifically, or what will it be used for? Gathar is used, one, to pay for the charges of merge mining, right? These companies that are forking off Gathar, that are merge mining using Gathar, they need to pay, right, for the hash rate. That's one very, very important part. Now, why are they paying? Because that's being paid out to the publishers, right? The publishers are taking their cut, obviously, for providing the hash rate at the end of the day. And then Gathar gets a commission at that end. There are other utilities as well, such as Masternodes, such as charges for smart contract. Excuse me, sorry. Charges for smart contract interactions. And there's also staking, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are some other utilities that are involved. We have some other parts, such as loyalty programs, which ties into a web wallet staking program through our partner Lux. Now, what is that? Is that one of the features we knew in the beginning to incentivize website users or application users is that we should have a loyalty program. Now, how does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Is that if I'm a website owner, I can opt to share certain percent of my earnings with my users, right? 5%, 10%, whatever it may be, as an incentive, as a reward. Now we added we added the web wallet staking into that. So what does that do is once it's configured, right, your coins that you've earned from browsing whatever site using whatever application is automatically sent to a staking wallet. So you're getting stakes for potentially just browsing or reading your favorite online newspaper.
Okay. All right. So clearly just the usership itself, you're incentivized through the token itself because it's linked to the publishing aspect. It's linked also to those who are utilizing the platform. Now, you have several different aspects of the utility. You mentioned one of them is staking. That's going to become more prominent, I understand, in the future as you start to explain exactly how that works. But the primary part here, it seems to be still, is that access to the publishing, access to the developer aspect. So can you talk us through more of that? You know, if I'm someone who wants to do some publications, or if I'm someone who wants to develop, how can, on the ecosystem, how can I benefit from the token?
Okay, so let's say let's start with the developer first, right? A common problem for a lot of chains, especially smaller chains, is 51% security, right? Or 51% attacks, or finding a pool to mine your coin, or just finding miners in general, right? Especially if you're proof of work coin. So if you're a developer, you can just come and you can fork off our chain to create your own coin. And the beauty of this is that all your hash rate is coming through the publisher. You don't need to go get external hash. You don't need to worry about finding proof of work or chain security. It's a very simple system. You're letting any developer to come in and removing a massive pain point for them as well. Now they would have to pay for obviously forking and for paying for merge mining as well. Now let's walk back up the chain, right, towards the publishing side. For providing that service or providing the access to hash rate, publishers get paid out in Gathr tokens and whatever coin is being merge mined as well. So for example, if it's Brad coin, right, you're getting Gathr and Brad coin.
Got it. And that's where that dual coin comes in. Now, obviously, by having that built in, there's revenue already built in for the model for you to be able to develop a sustainable income in the future. Is it something that you've really thought about clearly in terms of pricing with licensing?
With pricing? Or
right.
Sorry, licensing.
Well, yes. So obviously, as you mentioned before, as there's forking, as there's these side chains that can emerge, there's the benefits of the hash rate that can be used internally. Now, you can offer these services with a cost involved. Now, have you thought about that in terms of licensing or pricing for those who potentially could use your service?
So in terms of merge mining and in terms of forking, there are some numbers we have that we've been kind of playing around with our economic model, but I don't think it's a little early to kind of come out with there. Some numbers I can give out about what the potential cost of masternodes are, that we do know because of the block rewards, etc. But in terms of merge mining costs right now, I can't say too much on the specific amounts we would charge.
Got it. Well, let's bring it back a bit because we talked about a lot of different things just in that short period of time. Let's start a little bit more with exploring some of the key terms. One of them is there's a statement that's been made about Gathar, and that is that you're the first and the only web miner to allow the simultaneous mining of two coins. Now, how can you make that claim? How can you say that you're the first? Have you done your proper due diligence? Have you done your research in the space to make sure that you really are the first?
We are the first web miner that's offering merge mining, 100%. There's no one else. I know the coins that exist, not coins. I know the projects that exist that are focused on web mining. None of them have merge mining, and there are projects that do merge mining. You have Veriblock, you have Elastos, you have quite a few. You have one of the pioneers of it was Namecoin as well, but they don't have web mining. This marriage or this combination of web mining plus merge mining. No, I can 100% like hand over my heart. Yes, we are the first.
So, Reggie, why is it that many people don't know about you? Because obviously with something so novel, with this combination, you would think that the VCs, both in crypto and in the traditional sectors, would be jumping for the opportunity to take part in this. Why haven't they, or have they?
Well, last year, web mining, sure, we were talking to VCs and everything. Timing was a major issue with the bear market. We only moved into this pivot in January, and the pivot actually came about when ETC had the 51% attack, and we kind of just had like a light bulb moment that, hey, why don't we try this, or why don't we look into this? This could be something that could have a lot of value addition. So it's only been a couple of months, and just getting access to a lot of high tier VCs or a lot of very powerful players takes time. Now we're very lucky to have some great people who have joined us. And through everyone, we're now moving towards that direction. We're being introduced to very great people. We got introduced to someone like you, Brad. So I mean,
Right.
I'd say.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that. Now, I did have a look. I have researched you somewhat, and I noticed that you self-funded a lot with your team. So talk us through that. And what was the experience like in trying to sustain this bear market with, you know, the limited funds I would imagine that your team have? You're not a huge team, but you do have the tech, and you certainly do have the entrepreneurial prowess in that team, no question. But the money side, how did you make it? How did you fund this?
The initial round was 500 Ethereum, which was in April or June of last year, approximately, which when liquidated was approximately 250, 300K roughly.
So we're
at
talking
that price,
very low numbers, really, in the context of some of those bigger raises we saw in the bull market and even in the bear, to be honest. This is a very small amount of money that you raised in that initial round.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, but we stretched every cent, penny, or pence, depending on where you are, to the maximum limit. I mean, we have an MVP for the web miner. We have beta customers that are using the web miner. We built out a full team. We got our whole legal structure, everything built out. We even got a bunch of marketing, been mentioned in a bunch of PR aspects, and all of those things happened. But yes, I mean, our plan was last year to do an ICO, but the bear market hit. So we said it's just a bad idea to do it right now for sure. So we extended, and the founders, our team members, partners, service providers were just very gracious, and everyone just lent extremely good terms to us. You know, some of the founders put in 100K.
Right, and I really appreciate this transparency, because basically what I'm hearing from you is the whole team have pulled together. They literally pulled every resource, financially included, all of their own personal capital, their own expertise, literally everything they can put in to keep this going. And that's commendable. It really is. And it also shows that you want to build this for the long term, I would imagine too, because you're literally putting your money where your mouth is, not just getting that from other sources. And that's why I asked that. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the origins of the whole project itself. Where did it start from? Was it something born from an entrepreneurial sort of premise? Or what was it? Because I noticed there's a lot of entrepreneurs in your team. So what was the big draw card? What really made you want to build this?
So, you know, I've been, a bit about me is I started my career in oil and gas, but I transitioned into marketing working with a company called MSL Group, which is a publicist agency. I met my former boss there. And after I left Publicis and a few other marketing agencies, I had my first startup. It was a tech-based startup. It was like a Deliveroo type of B2B service, right? My boss, he actually runs a webcomic, right? For those who like comics, do check them out. Comics are great. I love comics. Yeah. So what happened is that for just like a lot of other websites or applications, his problem was monetization. How do I make money off all this time I'm spending on my content? You know, content is not cheap, and everyone expects content to be free for some stupid reason. I don't, well, yeah.
Well, I'm free. Can tell you that. That could be my mistake.
Hey, use Gathar.
Right. Okay.
So, you know, we set out and said it's just a bad idea to have any form of display ads or any form of advertising, right? It's just a stupid idea, honestly, because the rates, what it does to users is bad. So I went and did research and everything, and I found out about COINHIVE. For those unfamiliar, COINHIVE was the #1 malware of last year. Basically, for those who use Pirate Bay, if you enter Pirate Bay, at the bottom you will see by entering this site, you agree for your system resources, idle system resources, to be used to mine cryptocurrency, to mine XMR specifically. Pirate Bay has just put this disclaimer. This was never there. I was like, that is really interesting. Someone can give up their spare system resources to mine cryptocurrency and make money for it. I'm like, that's crazy. So I did some more digging. I knew in that
wasn't there an issue with attacks though in association with this? There was some sort of issue with security last year. Is that right, with COINHIVE?
Yes. So one of the biggest issues with COINHIVE was that they are not transparent. There are a lot of rumors I've heard personally, which I don't think it's nice to mention on the video, but I'm sure people dug them up, they'll find out what I'm saying.
Sure.
For transparency purposes, basically they allowed people to do hidden mining. So for example, bradlaurie.com, right? Inject the miner, no one knows it's mining, which is a massive consent issue. If you're using something of mine, at least ask me, right?
Right.
So that's what happened with COINHIVE.
So you saw the value in the concept, but you also saw the problems, and that's what prompted you to really build this out. So you can address some of the benefits of the autonomous control of trying to be able to publish content, engaging in advertising in a more transparent and decentralized way. I mean, there's a lot of things that Gathar can do.
For sure, for sure. I mean, definitely the main thing was just providing websites, applications, just another way of making money. That's how, just another way of making money. But then as we kind of went more into it, and we were like, we started looking at hardcore numbers pretty early on about, how many data breaches have there been in a year? What is actually, how does identity fraud happen? Why does it happen? And it all starts because there's massive data collection because of advertising, which is needed because of the hyper targeting that needs to happen, right?
Right, exactly.
So we're a consent-based model, right? You need to either opt in or opt out, depending on how the website configures it, but you are clearly informed of this is happening. That there's no way there's some hidden mining crap, because that's just not okay. You need to let people know that it's happening.
Right. Now, some of the things that you must have built into your system are things like scalability, security, and profitability. Now, we have touched on some of the revenue aspects, and we'll go into that later, but scalability, let's talk about that. You're a proof of work by design, is that right?
Right. The blockchain is proof of work as by design. Yes.
Okay. So how does this...
Sorry, sorry. It's a hybrid chain. So you have a proof of work light nodes that is on the that's on the browser and application side. And then you have Masternodes as well, that is hosting the full blockchain. Because if you're having a node on a website, it needs to be very, very light, like under a couple MB. So that connects with or syncs with the Masternode to ensure that all the blockchain data is on the Masternode and is just syncing. Without the Masternodes, the light nodes would not exist.
Got it. And that's I've actually read about this in some other protocols, and that's important because you really maximize the value of having a node, but you reduce all of that pressure by having that light node. So everything can work pretty uniformly, pretty successfully without all of that, the overload of the whole network. Now, scalability, let's go back to that for a moment. Often with proof of work, we have issues with scalability, clearly. Because we're so focused on security in that respect. So how are you addressing the scalability problem?
So in terms of scalability, right, this is a debate that's still ongoing to this day within the internal team. And I mean externally in crypto as well. If I'm going to take what we've actually gone for is using adjustable block size cap initially, right? And we thought of doing layer 2 solutions such as Lightning or whatever, or having some form of that in there. Right. But it's complex. Lightning's not ready. Yeah, it's complex and it's not ready yet. ABC, adjustable block size cap, it's a good medium-term solution for sure, right? But the choices are very limited as to what you can do for, especially when trying to scale a hybrid blockchain, right? Sure, we have the scalability process of the scalability aspect of, let's say, masternodes and staking, but it still is a complex issue to scale. So we felt that an adjustable block size cap is a good way to get moving forward, at least until the whole ecosystem evolves, where we can see let's say a clearer path in the tunnel of what we should be finite on.
Well, let's talk more on that. So the adjustable block size cap, what does that entail for those who don't know? How does that actually really facilitate, especially given that you do have that interesting sidechain system? We talked about how users can build their own sidechains into it through the forking model, but how essentially does that adjusted system work so that people can really maximize on that proof of work model?
Okay. So for those who are not familiar with the ABC model or ABC adjustable block size cap, it is actually used by Bitcoin ABC, which is a fork of Bitcoin Cash, which is a fork of Bitcoin. So 3 forks down. So adjustable block size cap is basically that you have a block size, right, in every single blockchain. This block size can change, right? I believe Bitcoin Cash was trying to do a 32 MB block size. But then that's where ABC came along and said, okay, we're going to do adjustable block size cap based on the actual capacity and the requirements on the transactions needed, which makes a lot of sense. Why do you want to have a 32 MB block size when there's only like 1 MB of transactions happening, right?
So
it's just a bloated network.
You've basically chosen the one that you think is the most optimal to really set forth as the bedrock means of adjusting this block size. So that's the sort of position you're taking for this to scale.
Yes, and that's why we also went with, I'm sure someone is going to watch this and be like, oh, these are Bitcoin Cash enthusiasts and stuff. I know it's a very contentious issue, but we also took D601 as a difficulty adjustment algorithm because we did find that went through, it went through trial by fire, right? The split happened, the fork happened. There was a market volatility, massive volatility that happened in the market. The difficulty adjustment algorithm could not pick up, and they changed it to respond to those market needs. And that's what we found in that difficulty adjustment algorithm is very good for us.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, a lot of the people who are listening are not highly technological, and I think we need to pull it back a bit. But what is important is that you do have that adjustment mechanism in, and that it is possible to scale through it. Now, let's talk a little bit more on the discussions of merge mining again, because this really needs more exploration. It is so fundamental to design. Now, included is this concept of multi-coins for earning. Let's discuss that, particularly in the context of hash rate again, so people can understand how this actually operates in situ, in reality, in actuality as you build this out for real use case.
Okay, sure. So Gather, right? We have the main chain that is running, which has MetaLife, which has our beta users and everyone providing the hash rate. Now, Brad comes along and he wants to fork off Gather to develop a coin that supplies headphones or tracks headphone data across. Yeah, sure. Right? You come and you fork. And let's say the easiest way for you will be to use the same algorithm as us, whatever we would be using, right? In terms of hashing algorithm specifically. You're using the hashing algorithm, you're then merge mining through us and then through the publishers, very simply put.
Right.
The other ways is when
the
you have
interesting thing too, just to jump in, is that if I'm then that person who's representing, the headphones, it's easier for me to use you because you've set this up. It's a lot more work for me to have to do it from scratch, and I wouldn't actually have the resources. So isn't that the whole point, is that utilizing you is economical for me?
It's economical, it's ease of use, and it lowers the barrier of entry to coming onto a blockchain.
Okay, now let's talk about the risks of the external pooling of hash rates. We've talked about that, in pre-interview. It's unlikely that would happen, but can we talk about that in terms of, any inherent risks you see, or have you thought about it and made sure that there are barriers for that, so that there's prevention for that issue to crop up?
For sure. There's three aspects I would like to mention. Well, the first aspect is not directly about the pooling, but this was actually suggested by one of our advisors, Johnny, right? So what he said is that, if we're taking on external coins and we're providing them hash rate, we can never take on more than 51% of their hash rate or provide more than 51% of their hash rate. So we don't have a majority control that chain, right? So it's just not possible to do any kind of 51% attacks or any bad actions, if you will.
Got it.
Right now, in terms of external hash rate and external pool. So in terms of risk specifically, if Bradcoin, right, has come into existence via forking Gather, there's no issue there because you're only merge mining. All your hash rate is coming from one source, which is Gather, or merge mining via Gather and the publishers. The actual risk that can happen, which in my understanding and our understanding is low, if you as Bradcoin, right, have decided something in my blockchain is not great, or I need to change something, let's say the hashing algorithm, I want to change the block size cap, whatever it may be, and you decide to fork your own fork of the original fork, right? And you have external hash rate, yes, then it can be a contentious fork. Then there could be an issue. But the question is, why would someone bring in external hash rate when you have all your hash given for?
Right. And the other issue as well is it's more likely to be more expensive from that external position because of the processes involved. Why not just do it internally? I would argue that the costs involved would be one preclusion, one reason why it's unlikely to happen.
Exactly. Cost, ease of use, all of it added together. If it's going to be more expensive, it's a bigger trouble to handle finding the miners, paying the miners, be it through NiceHash or whatever it may be. Why are you going to do it, right? When everything is taken care of for you.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's discuss again, go back to the hosting of the Gather code, specifically with regard to publishing. I want to understand this better, really explore that value add. Why would anyone want to specifically use Gather to publish? What's the real draw card in terms of that hosting, and also just, your general tokenization process as well for the publications?
Okay, so let's say platinum.com. Right? Platinum.com, for them to come and use Gather, right? I'm guessing you're asking about how do you implement Gather as a publisher?
Absolutely. And specifically just with these examples, it really helps us understand that in actuality.
Okay, so platinum.com, right? I'm the developer of platinum.com. I'm the website owner, whatever it may be. I sign up on Gather, right? There's a pre and post compliance process to ensure there's no bad actors that are using Gather, be it for terrorism funding or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You pass compliance, then you have a dashboard that you go to where a script with a specific API key is generated to your website specifically, right? You take that script and you post it into your website very easily. So platinum.com has now got their script, right? They've injected it into their website. They put it in their backend. There's multiple explainer videos and we explain how to do it. Now, once it's there, it's ready to go. Anyone who comes to your website sees the disclaimer, you opt in or opt out. There you go. Your system is being used to mine cryptocurrency.
Okay, now you said opt in. Now talk us through the CPU as well. Like how easy is it for someone to do this?
So it really depends. In the current model where we have, in the previous model specifically where we had Gather as version 1 running and Monero as one of these starting points, and we had Bitcoin Gold and everything else, it can go high. It can go up to about 25-30%. It uses idle resources. In V2, we are trying to do only up to 7% specifically. Okay.
Right. So that's is it relatively easy though? Like relatively anyone can access this with the generic resources? You don't need anything special. Yeah. You don't need any sort of mining rig. You don't need anything special to do this.
No. I mean, anything that has a CPU or GPU really can, and an internet connection can be used. Right. I mean, last year when we were at this conference called Rise, someone we met there was interested in asking if Gather as a monetization tool can be implemented in his smartwatch. He had built a hardware watch. So yeah, anything that is networked and has a CPU and GPU.
Okay, and I think that's really important because as you build this out, it'll become more likely that things like that smartwatch, there'll be more access to some of the mobile technology that we have, or whatever it is, but not just restricted to some of the GPUs, CPUs that are currently there. You'll expand the opportunities, I would imagine.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of opportunities to go on the publishing side specifically, but even on the bottom end for the merge mining and developers, there's a lot of expansion that can be done once the ecosystem is sustainably growing, more importantly.
Cool. Now, advertising, I want to talk about that. Now, you recently spoke with Nye. A lot of the discussion he had was specifically on advertising and publications. Talk us through that, though, the problem, solution, most importantly, the solution that you offer in relation to these publications and the scope of this. So if we talk about it from a global frame, clearly there's real use case for this in the current business models of today, not of tomorrow, but of the ability for companies right now who can see the benefit to engage with Gathar now through advertising.
Yes, for sure. So when I spoke with Nye, the issue he saw was about the data collection, right? And the example which I could state was, for example, let's say you search, I think he said toothbrush, or let's say you search, I don't know, Samsung phones, right?
Okay.
On Instagram, on Facebook, or whatever social media or web platform you're using, right?
Right.
Minutes later, you're searching some other platform or browsing some social media and you see it in there. Simple. You see an ad for that mobile phone. Why? This is that data collection, which is really, really intrusive. So that's where the issue lies there. Advertising in today's day and world is just going to get worse and worse. You have things like GDPR, which is trying to make it better, but in reality, it's really, really a mucked up space. The things going on in terms of data collection, in terms of these extreme, imagine sitting on some server somewhere in the world, there's this massive
You sound like you're talking about Facebook right now. This is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing Google. I'm hearing Cambridge Analytica again. These conversations happen a lot. So how does Gathar flip this on its head? How does it make it decentralized? How do we benefit autonomously through our own our rights to control Gathar somewhat through the system of blockchain?
So from two parts to that, right? One is just if you are using Gathar to monetize, you are not collecting data. So that just solves that on the start or on the front. And on the other part, when you're using a blockchain where everything is trackable, immutable, you're not having these leaks, you're not having these breaches because of the cost involved to do something like that.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, if that's the case, enterprises must be paying attention to you because you are doing something, you know, somewhat, and I would imagine that's down the track. But let's talk about businesses generally, or whatever it is that, or whomever it is that's currently, you know, paying attention, whether that be partners more importantly. Talk us through what's happening right now as you're building your technology in terms of real world attention for business.
For business specifically. So what I can say right now is, like, we just signed up with, partnered with MetaLife and Lux, both. MetaLife providing hash, Lux needs hash, right? That's a real world use case, and that's the core POC of, or a proof of concept of what we are doing and why it's needed, right? Now, if we talk about an enterprise and business level, right, we would only chase after enterprise or onboard enterprise at a certain ecosystem level. When I mean ecosystem, I'm saying there's a certain number of masternodes, there's a certain number of chains, and you have a certain number of publishers, websites, and applications. It's very important to have that. You can't have, let's just say, 5 publishers and, you know, 10 child chains. No, because then that's going to hit the price of the token. You need to have this whole ecosystem, firstly, with the certain amount of publishers to the same ratio, the amount of child chains growing at a sustainable rate.
Got it. So doing that, the enterprise part is really the final point. It's really once you can showcase that you have all the nodes built out, you have all of the master nodes, you have all of the capacity for the developers to literally start to really build out the ecosystem. So let's start there then. Perhaps the question needs to be, what are you doing in this interim to get to that point, you know, that end point of the enterprise flourishing through Gathar? How are you now getting all of the developers on board? How are you building out these publishers? This is obviously a key part, this interim phase. Right.
So in terms of getting publishers and websites or applications on board, we had a valid customer acquisition strategy that we've been used. It works, right? Because of our beta users, we've seen it. Publishers are very happy to have an additional form of monetization. It's very simple, right? So that we know how to approach and get publishers on board. It's a very simple question of a snowball effect, right? You get so many small publishers, then a big medium one bites and the big one bites. That's just what's going to happen with that. Now let's flip it around and talk about the developers, right? What we've seen so far with talking to Lux and a few other coins is that people aren't adverse to having extra security on their chain. It's a matter of cost and technological feasibility for them, or man hours more importantly. So as long as that's managed for them, right? And okay, they can afford, or they see the value in having additional hash rate. This depends chain to chain. For, let's say, at our size right now, we're small, right? Sure. A big chain is not going to find much value in paying us and using us. However, smaller chains will. And that's the same thing. Certain amount of smaller chains will come on, our whole ecosystem and hash rate, more importantly, will grow. And then bigger chains will consider using us at that point. Once we have enough hash rate where it makes a difference.
Exactly. That's where I wanted to jump in, because you need a significant hash rate for this to work. So let's backmap again. Talk us through where you're at now in terms of the hash rate development right now, in terms of, you know, building this ecosystem with developers, as we talked about. Where are you at, and what is the strategy to build this out specifically now to make sure that you get to that point where you can really be of value in the enterprise sector?
For sure. As of now, today, we are almost completed with the specific POC, the proof of concept. And the proof of concept is defined as the web miner. The web miner was finished last year. It has users, all of that, right? The web miner you're using our own chain, the Gathar chain, in combination with a child chain. This is the proof of concept, which is almost done.
Okay.
I mean, a couple of days is what we're talking about now.
Right. That's exciting. So now, once that's done, let's talk through the connections in terms of those who can really start to build out this hash rate. Who are these people that you're consulting with? Are these the partners you've advertised on your website, or are there more coming in the pipeline? What's really going to build this out?
So the initial, when we start moving a testnet, we're going to start, let's say, running a demo with MetaLife and Lux, highlighting the use case specifically with them, that it's working with them, right? And yes, we have partners, specifically smaller chains that we've been talking to already right now to come on, to start using Gathar at a certain point in stage. Publishers, it's really not a concern for us because it's very easy to get publishers on board. Okay.
All right. Well, that sounds like you're really in the throes of building this out. And I think that's what people need to know. Now, in terms of revenue, are you set to have any at all, or are we still way ahead from that because you need to build this out further at the fundamental level?
Our web miner had revenue, right? But we, all EAP charges or early adopter charges that we had, we just delayed all of them, right? As a customer acquisition strategy, right? You don't have to pay any commissions for X amount of time. We just kept pushing that on just to get more customers.
Right.
Yeah, so now we'll only get revenue until we hit testnet or mainnet at some point.
Okay.
Mainnet,
so
really.
let's talk the dates then and the roadmap in terms of the mainnet especially. Let us know what's in the plan this year.
This year, I have to refer back to the roadmap. This year, as far as I remember, we were looking to target mainnet by the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double.
Well, that's fine. I mean, if we're talking roughly the end of the year, there's a lot to do until you get to the mainnet. And obviously, the viewers will know, if they don't know anything about the Gathar, they'll learn soon that you're doing an IEO on CoinNeil.
Yes.
Obviously, that'll be an ERC20, I'd imagine. That's not a native token. You're literally building towards that mainnet plan. But these beta tests, these test nets, I mean, are they consistently going to be updated and provide people with information on how you're building towards mainnet?
Of course. That, I mean, a valid communication strategy of how much you're updating your community, your audience, or potential investors is very important, right? Hey, we've hit this X milestone that's going on. For example, we've onboarded X publisher or we've onboarded X coin.
Okay.
Right? For the testnet, it's very important. The whole aspect of the testnet is adding the additional features such as interoperability with smart contracts, masternodes, and web wallet staking. Those are the additional key features.
Right.
And mainnet, the difference. Yeah, sorry.
Well, that was a big thing for you to mention, so let's explore them. Interoperability, it's often thrown around as some sort of just generic term, but it means a lot when it comes to being able to work together and your smart contracts to be of value. How are you doing it that sets you apart so that you can have that true business value? Because you need the smart contracts to, really have a live ecosystem.
For sure. So it's not what we're doing separately. It's the fact of just a convenience of how we're building it, right? So think about it like this. What we're doing as Gathar we are not reinventing the wheel. We're just taking a bunch of things that we know exist and work and combining all of them. Really honestly speaking, right? So with the interoperability, how and why does it even make sense for us? Is that if you think about it, you're having, let's say, 10 forks of Gathar. They're all inheriting the same logic, right?
Right.
So if you add an interoperability layer via smart contracts, they're all able to talk to each other, integrate with each other to whatever data. So an example I've used before with people, let's say a supply chain transaction, right? I forked off Gathar. I am someone who's trying to track sales of pharmaceuticals, right? I'm the manufacturer at the end of the day. CoinB comes on. I'm the manufacturer who actually, I'm the distributor of these products. And we want to do our finances between these, from the purchase orders to invoicing, all through the blockchain and via smart contracts between each other. Right. I don't have to build, a fresh smart contract interaction set or anything like that. It's there. It's inherited in the logic because they forked off us.
Right, and that obviously makes it easier for the whole operation to work because there's the interaction between different. Is it the smart contracts through different ones in the interoperability of the smart contracts, or is it at a different level?
It's interoperable smart contracts. So there'll be a smart contract layer, specifically logic that's going to be inherited. Every coin is going to have that, specifically the merge mining feature and smart contracts. That's going to be in each fork. Right.
Okay. Now I want to talk to you more. Now we'll move across to, we touched on this before with VCs and funding. Now you spoke initially with some reasonably substantial traditional investors initially. So some of them, for example, Rainforest 500, for whatever reason, you explained how you funded it. But is there a plan in the IEO to really build this out, to get the attention more so of some of these big players who, whether they be in the traditional sector, the IEO obviously is going to be coming very soon. But do you anticipate that it's going to be something that's going to wake up perhaps the people that missed out, those big investors in the traditional sector especially, where they could have really jumped on board earlier? Is it your hope that they'll start paying attention?
A big part of what happened with the VCs is the bear market. When you pitch VCs, it's like you pitch 100 and you get one in most cases, right? In traditional private equity sense. That's the same case with us at the end of the day. But I do feel with not just the IEO, but the new model we have specifically, because there is, again, hand over heart, there's no one else that we have done our research on that we can find that is doing this. and the potential of it is more important. The use cases specifically, right? Additional monetization was great alone, but the fact that you're able to provide a hash rate security is even crazier, or even stronger, really.
Right. Well, let's explore that. I mean, you're saying the potential is immense. Give us some examples of the scope of the verticals that this could apply to, just so we really get and we can grapple with the gravity of this. How can this be applied? In what verticals? In what sectors? You know, in different departments, even. I mean, where can this really go?
So it's sector agnostic, right? But if we talk about publishers, anyone with a website or application can use it. It's not specific to, you know, the sector of
I suppose we're really trying to explore, though, how it can work in all these sectors because it is agnostic. Give us, you know, some examples of what you know it can work in. Can it work in the health? Okay. Can it work in, you know, legal?
Sure. For websites and monetizations, browsers, that's a clear use case that's happening already. Any website, any applications, hardware watches as well, mobile streaming devices, that's all places it can work, right? Okay. Let's flip it around to the developer side. Supply chain, very easy. A lot of companies are struggling with corruption and tendering process. Tendering processes are very, very corrupt. This is a very big thing that happens in today's world, right? Companies can come, they can launch fork off Gathers specifically at the enterprise level, and then they can have their own chain. They're getting their mining already done. They don't have to worry about that. And they can have their own supply chain process that's in there.
Okay.
Or what they use blockchain for.
All right. Well, obviously, there's a lot of potential for this in all the verticals. But we discussed that the VCs themselves, they sort of missed the boat. Some of these big ones, Rainforest and 500, they were looking at it. But you self-funded the majority of that. Congratulations. But now you have an IEO coming. Give us the information right now, Reggie. What's exactly going to happen? What is the plan that you know of? What are the dates? What are all the facts that, you know, we need to know to understand what this IEO is and what it means for your future?
For sure. Our IEO starts on the 27th and ends on the 28th on COINHIVE. It's priced at 2 cents to start with. There's no discounts or any bonuses, right? What does the IEO do?
It's just one price. Yeah, I mean, I'm being real because there's a lot of crap that happens in crypto. So you're setting this one price, people can trust that. But can you just let us know what happened before this? Was there any deals, wheeling and dealing going on before that we need to know now? Because it's fine if there was, as long as it's transparent. Let us know, you know, if there were any pre-sale deals, anything at all, so we know as it, you know, we don't want to see it come up.
Oh, a pre-sale deal. Sorry, I'm like, when you said wheeling and dealing, I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, I mean,
yes.
that is there's a lot of wheeling and dealing that goes on with the private sales, as you know. They're all trying to get in, possibly.
No, we have not had any private sales to date. We've had a seed round. That's the only type of funding, and then the rest has all been, you know, through partner extensions, self-funding, etc.
Okay, so the IEO is a set price. Can you confirm the price again?
2 cents.
Okay, 2 cents. Now let us
2
know.
US cents, yeah.
Okay, so tell us firstly why you chose COINHIVE. You could have chosen, you know, obviously a number of different platforms, these exchanges to really launch on. What was the fundamental reason? So
with COINHIVE, there were multiple factors that we looked at. One was definitely the volume, adjusted volume, right? The amount of users they have and what is their brand value. Now, you know, all the tier ones were out of their reach, either for cost basis. Mainly, it was cost was a major prohibiting factor for us to reach them. Be it whoever, you know, Huobi, KuCoin, XY, whatever the tier ones, right? They were out of our reach. Now, when we started looking at tier two,
$100,000 often.
A lot of money. It's a lot of money. And we just couldn't afford that, honestly speaking, right? So we looked at the other options, right?
Okay.
Yeah. We looked at Probit. There were some other Korean exchanges. Treebit is one. Foobit. There are all of these unknown exchanges that, you know, you never heard of. And then we're like, okay, there's COINHIVE. We've heard of Bitforex. We've heard of LBank, ZB as well. We've heard of these. We looked at all of them. We looked at the pricing comparisons. We looked at what we could get most bang for our buck. And we're like, you know what? Let's go with COINHIVE. Okay.
So you did your research. That's what I do want to hear. I want to make sure that you didn't just pick one because, you know, someone sent that to you or, you know, an advisor, you know, had a connection, but you actually did the research as a team. Now, COINHIVE is coming. What was the date again?
27th.
Okay, the 27th. Now, what other factors, what other aspects of this IEO do people need to know as you're about to, unfurl for your IEO release?
Oh, for sure. So, I mean, once the IEO is complete, it's listed in maximum a week or two. 2 cents. It's fairly straightforward. You need to complete your KYC on there. There's certain restrictions for countries such as US, China, and a few other places as well.
So why do an IEO? Why not just list it on an exchange?
Funding.
Okay.
Honestly speaking, capital.
Okay. So you need the capital. Can you tell us a bit more about that in terms of numbers? What are you anticipating from this? What does it mean to you, and how are you planning to spend it?
For sure. We're expecting anywhere between roughly $500,000 to maybe $1.5 million from the COINHIVE IEO at maximum, right? This is the range. It's a big range, obviously, $1 million, but that's what we have based on all the historical data we've seen and based on the capability of the users in there as well, is what we're saying. Now, how will we spend that money? We have budgets set out for everything, right? Certain budgets are up in the air right now because we need to have the numbers. For example, if we don't raise enough, we have to cut down on things like, we can't open offices or certain developer talents or other budgets. For example, marketing budgets, right? One budget that will never be cut down, and what we spent the majority of our money last time was also development. That's always going to be the priority for us specifically.
Right. Okay. Now, one thing that's a tough question for you, and you can answer it however you want or pass, but in crypto itself, there's a lot of speculation right now about liquidity provision, whether that be internally with the supposition that it's happening with exchanges. There's certainly things going on that are questionable, and some that are very legitimate with regard to non-wash trading, liquidity and support. There's certain practices that they can do, much like Wall Street does. Now, what are your thoughts on this with regard to exchanges generally in terms of supporting the liquidity and the volume of certain launches like yours to make sure that you have that long-term sustainable growth?
Tier 1 exchanges, count on it. They'll help you for sure. They'll charge you and do whatever is required. Tier 2, you need to do it yourself. You need to source a liquidity provider. You need to have them integrated, and you need to deal with it.
Got it. And so can I ask you, have you made that a priority? Have you made sure that you've done the legitimate processes so that you can protect the longevity of your token so that you can reach and achieve utility? For
sure, yes. We have a liquidity provider who's there who will provide liquidity for investors specifically, yes. And a very good one as well.
Okay, and thank you for being so blunt about that. Appreciate it. Now, your team, I had a good look at them. A lot of them are very entrepreneurial, and I've even mentioned to you this privately. It wasn't necessarily a concern, but it was something that I wanted to understand more. Where are all your techies? There are some really good ones there in your team. Not many though. So are we missing some of them?
There are people who are not willing to be named, right? There are people who aren't extremely significant compared to what they put in, right? For example, project managers, junior developers, they're just not there. Right now, what I can say in terms of developers, what's going on, Ashish, our CTO, and there's 3 others right now who are unnamed completely because they're working part-time at this point, because they're working on equity and coins, right?
Sure. And obviously, I would imagine that they're incentivized to move to full-time when you can afford it. Now, you've got the techies, you've got others we don't know about. The entrepreneurs, there's a lot of them. Why is finance and entrepreneurial sort of endeavor so important to this? And do you need to have that lead this out? You're the CEO, so you have that skill set too. Do you need to make sure that you build this as a business, not just have the tech?
Yes. It's great to have tech. It is great to have this. Blockchain is amazing, but what is a real use case? What are the legalities involved? Regulation, risk, budgeting, those are really important aspects, right? That we're building it as a business, but is blockchain at the heart? And it's very important to build it like that, because things like culture, very important, right? We're a distributed team at the end of the day. How do you maintain a culture in that? It's not easy at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you do things like governance within the company itself? What protocols do you follow? Many blockchains have protocols, but how do you vote on certain matters? How do you take board meetings? You can't do that if you're tech first.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Now, one of the interesting things that correlates with this is that you are, proprietary by design. So your code, let's discuss that. Ironically, it's not transparent at the moment.
No, it's not at the moment. I mean, someone has asked me this before as well, and I think maybe by test, I know we'll open source it at some point. We have to, right? At least for the forking to happen. So it will come to that. But until we reach that point, I don't think it would be. We
Mm.
need to get a certain ball rolling, and then we'll get it out there.
So Reggie, how can we trust that you're at the position you say you're at if we can't see any of the code? Are you going to at least let some do a bit of a code review, or you know what I mean? How can we make sure that the code's on track?
Hey, two things. So if you want to see if the web miner is live, go to app.gathor.io, complete the compliance process. Just drop me an email and I'll have it fast tracked. You can then go and sign up and use the web miner. That's proof that that works. Now, if anyone wants to come and see our code, what's been done and what progress, drop me a mail at reggie.gathor.io and we'll arrange a time where you can come via Skype or whatever maybe you can talk to our CTO, obviously when the time sync up and everything, and you can look for it at yourself. We have nothing to hide specifically. We just don't want people. That's the thing. We were the first. We are the first in doing this.
You don't want copycats. You don't want those appropriators. I understand. Now, a tough question again is some of your advisors. You know, they may have raised eyebrows in the past. I'm going to go there now. Jake Bavel, I hope I pronounced him right. Well known as the Korean crypto Korean Jew. I think I pronounced it right. Now he's been involved in several different startups, and he's well known. I've met him. He was involved in some such as Hybrid Blocks. So I do want to address this directly with you. Now, some of those projects didn't do so well. He's very well known in the space. He's been well and truly involved in capital raising as well. Why is he an advisor for this project?
Okay, so I met Jake last year, the beginning of last year, I would say. Yeah, around then, through Farouk. Farouk is the co-founder, and we've been known each other for 12, 13, 14 years, roughly. Okay. So, you know, he introduced me to Jake and everything. Mm-hmm. So why is Jake an advisor? It's two aspects. Our seed round was done in the dojo, which is run by both of them, right? Okay.
So that's a fundraising system that they've set up, and they have all the capital investors in that dojo group. Is that correct?
Yes, they helped us with all of that. Yes, they did that. Right. The more important aspect was why I see how it worked was with me is that I've built communities for my previous startups. I've done that, but never a crypto specific related one. Jake has built, you know, for all of the things that have happened with him, he built a very strong brand of the Korean Jew trading specifically, and he built a very, very active and very loyal community. So I mean, in the early days, we would hop on calls and I would ask him like, hey, Jake, how do you go about X, Y, Z? Or, you know, how do I make sure I'm retaining my community to the large extent? How often do you think we should be posting, or what news should we be giving them? Mm-hmm. And that's where I saw his true value, was that the ability that he's gone and done this. He's built a really, really strong community, which people may undermine.
And what's interesting is that your co-founder had a strong relationship with Jake as well, and that's what precipitated this. It's important we know, and it's important it's very transparent, so that it isn't just simply, you know, based on friendship that this evolved, that it actually had real meaningful value, and that Jake had a whole system in place built in to do this capital raise. The question, though, is why do it that way? Why not still go and consult and do the very best you can to get that VC capital? Did you do everything you could to try and get them in to invest? Because I would imagine if you had by going through with Jake, there would have been less VCs moving in concert or in consultation with this kind of structure that they built.
I don't believe that would be the issue with coming to the first question specifically, is that why didn't we go down, let's say, going to a VC first? Honestly speaking, if you go to a VC at such an early stage, they will take your whole company, and you are not going to get a strategic investor. You are not going to get someone who's going to add value. You are looking you're looking at a shark. Right. You're looking at someone who's going to take 60% of your company, and they're going to offload it at the earliest chance possible. As much as basically what happens in crypto at the end of the day, that's what they're going to do on you, and they're going to leave you high and dry. They're not going to help you with your project.
I see. No. So by doing it the way you did it, this is important also, you had it quite distributed, I'd imagine, like a lot of different participants in Jake's capital raising group. So how many was the number we're talking about as it was distributed in that small amount of money that you did raise?
How many what? People?
How many participants? Yeah. I mean, how many investors?
Oh, people, right, investors. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I'm really
But it
sorry.
is
I
just,
can
but
double check
that's
and
okay.
say.
No, that's okay. But it is distributed. That's what I'm looking for, because it's a far cry from that very monopolistic scenario that you would have if you did have that VC. And I've actually seen that play out in other companies before, in startups, where it was just too monopolized, and it was really a problem because that one investor often had a very special deal, you know, that seed deal that really challenged the viability of the project. And it also meant that they
Right.
could decide and could dictate the outcome of the future of the startup. So this is a means around that. So it's interesting that that did take place. Now, another advisor I want to talk to you about is Charles Reed. He is the strategic advisor. I know Charles personally, very well networked. Why Charles?
Great guy. Charles. We got introduced to Charles by our other strategic advisor, Johnny Kim. Last year, when we were about to do the ICO, or planning to do an ICO, and we were looking for private equity, we got introduced to him. He talked to us about his incubator, Severamps, and we were talking from them. So we were in touch since then. And a couple month or so ago, you know, we started talking again, and I spoke to him, and I gave him the update, you know, about what Gathar is doing and what we're aiming to do and everything. And he loved the tech. He's like, "This is an amazing idea." Then the advisory part came up, etc. And then I already had seen his value in that short amount of time, when he just said, you know, "I'm willing to help you out because this is a great idea and everything. You know, just tell me what you need." In that time, the introductions he got me, for example, to yourself or other people as well, were insane. You know, and he was just doing this out on a limb, which I felt was very, very nice to do. You know, as a person.
Right. So he's doing the role as an advisor should, clearly showing that he's doing the work first. And that's what we want to hear, because some advisors don't do that. They actually demand for a high number of tokens before they do any work at all. But what's clear is that you've known Charles for some time, and he's been doing the work.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Charles is solid. I mean, in the short time we've had, you know, a month and a half, 2 months, he, however long it is, I can't remember the time period, he's been very, very good, very helpful. I mean, if Charles has the time and you have the chance, please have a word with him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I actually do talk to him quite a lot. He's a great guy. Now, exchanges, I want to talk to you about that. Once you list, you know, post IEO, you're on the COINHIVE exchange accessible. What's the plan from that point? You definitely need to have one, you know, to sustain this growth in the future, to open up volume. Do you have a plan? Obviously waiting for a bit more money to flow into the coffers, but what's the plan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do have some plans. Ideally, of course, if we have the money, we want to go for tier one. You know, luckily right now we're getting the introduction to all the tier ones and everything. So that is the idea, that, yeah, okay, if we can afford it, let's go for tier one straight away, right?
Right. And that's where the value of the advisors come in, I'd imagine. And any party that is supportive of your project is they want to facilitate you getting to those exchanges.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. Now, what about money? Do you think you'll have the money to be able to make that happen? Because it's going to cost you money to be able to access those exchanges.
I believe so. I believe, I think we should do between 500 to 1.5. And with that amount, if it's not a tier one, it's going to be something very high tier two. Now, I know people might disagree with me, but KuCoin is really a very high tier two, right? But that's a very acceptable exchange. And I know their costs already. That is something that's attainable if we raise at bare minimum or bare bones. Yes, that is doable.
Right. Okay. And obviously, you know, as this builds out, it'll get easier for you to have these conversations, I'd imagine, over time. Now, endpoint, you know, let's be honest. Some of the more expensive ones, Binance is the big B. Are you thinking that far ahead? You know, are you dreaming big?
Not
in terms of, and I'm only talking about that in the sense of volume. I'm not trying to plug them or FOMO or anything, but volume is obviously an imperative for really significant success.
For sure. I mean, yeah, definitely dreaming about them, but it's way, way too early for us right now.
Right.
You know, maybe through a community vote or something, but I know their prices are ludicrous, and
sure.
it's just
well,
the future.
Right. Now let's talk about some of the other advertising related partnerships and any others that you want to mention. Now, Beanstalk, Backramax, Aperium, Credits, TSC.
TSL.
The TSL, my apologies. Now, these are all relevant, especially for the media arm. Talk us through just any that you think you need to be touched on now in terms of the value add for these partners that you have.
For sure. So as most people would know, or anyone who's doing some form of blockchain related startup or projects, as people call them. I believe they're all startups at the end of the day.
Sure.
Finding good blockchain devs full time is just beyond expensive, right? And securing them is even harder. It takes time. It takes a lot of time specifically. So Beamster is one of our strategic partnerships for specifically development related and related knowledge, right? They're very good. They're very, very good in what they've done, and they have some really talented developers with them. We've been very happy with them so far. Yeah. Bucker Max. So he's that webcomic I mentioned in the beginning, right? So he was one of our first early adopters, still using it. You can, go up and check and everything. In exchange, basically, he does some free marketing for us. He actually wrote a comic about me and how Gathar started and everything. So if anyone wants to read that, go ahead. So some free marketing from there. And Aperium is very solid. It is a full service business consultancy, right? They have done, through Patrick's space specifically, it started out as basic services. Like they would help us with modeling, financial modeling. They would help us to go to market strategies, valuations when we were doing all these VC negotiations, legalities, because they have access to an army of lawyers as well, and they're very well networked with VCs and fundraising. So very solid company for that aspect. TSL, they're media accelerator. So things, getting in the media, different article mentions, things like that.
Right. So you've really built out the media plan. That's what I'm seeing from all these different partners. You've got something that's put forth. I would imagine you have a content calendar, something that's going to align with the move into the IEO and beyond. Have you seen it, or is someone working on that in the team?
Yeah. We have Gabe, our CMO. He does that. He handles all the marketing stuff for sure.
Okay.
We have a content calendar, different pieces have to go out, all of that. Sure.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that it is organized, because obviously we need to see the information as you unfold beyond the IEO. SEC, the US regulation, let's talk about that. Now, that's really important right now, especially given some of the contentious issues going on in the US, especially given the concerns of the different terminology, the different jurisdictional issues. What's your plan? Where is your entity based and registered?
We are a BVI registered entity, British Virgin Islands, Road Town, Tortola specifically. Our team is distributed, but our banks and banking facilities would be in Dubai, right? We're not looking to have any kind of entities or any nexus set up for the US until there's regulatory clarity going on. It just does not make sense in terms of the risk involved. Our lawyer specifically, his name is Steven, you can check him out, or he's on the site, is from the US, and he's an SEC specialist. It is the worst place to be doing anything with a token or a coin right now. It is a very, very difficult place.
It's interesting you say that, because, we'll talk about Elastis for a moment. We're seeing them go through the rigors of a legal challenge, simply because of some of the issues in which that played out with regard to stages of access initially. Now, you're trying to relay all of those risks by just simply not doing it in that region.
Nope. Until there's some clarity, it's just not worth, one, the risk and the capital involved to mitigate against those risks.
Got it. Okay. Now, just finally, before we finish off today, Reggie, I want to talk about incentives. Now, if I'm a participant in this, if I'm a developer, publisher, pitch me on the incentives. What's the real value add for me in terms of being able to profit or benefit or, gain some sort of monetary value out of this ecosystem?
If you're a publisher, you're getting some money by just having people use their spare computing power. If you are a developer, you're paying less because to launch off Gathar, you're spending less time and money both ways. If you're an enterprise in the future, whenever that's set up, you're saving time and money again. You don't need to find blockchain developers. You don't need to find mining pools, none of that. Just come fork off Gathar, have your chain ready, set it up, or we'll set it up for you, whatever you want if you're an enterprise, right?
Right. Okay.
If you're someone who likes nodes or masternodes, set up a masternode.
Sure. And in that respect, you can simply just have it in a passive sense. You can start to, accrue some value and not have to do a great deal of work at all. But is there anything you'd like to say as a final statement? Now we've addressed so many different aspects. There's a lot of facets to this very unpolished diamond that is potentially Gathar, moving towards polishing as you get known. I think that the attention is a real value for you right now. Is there anything you'd like to say to really wrap this up? Let people know exactly what you stand for, what fundamentally you're about, so people get it.
We are about transparency and ethical ethos and making sure that we are above board and we act ethically. Again, that's the whole thing about how we're doing this, from how we record finances to how we share information internally and externally. It's all because that's what I feel cryptocurrency and blockchain is at heart. And that's what we need to kind of emulate as a company as well.
Absolutely. Well, it stands for, essentially what the blockchain is all about, and that is fundamental transparency. And once again, to reiterate, you're about web monetization with decentralized blockchains. Web mining is the buzzword right now. That's really important. And that obviously goes with all of the other aspects that you've built in. So I really do wish you all the best, Reggie, as you hit this IEO and you move more importantly beyond it. This is not designed, this interview, to promote the IEO. This is important. It's designed to bring the attention to Gathar so people can explore and do their own research into what they fundamentally do. Again, as Reggie said, they're doing something that hasn't been done before. It's the first time ever. And Richie, what was that? What is the thing that no one, to your knowledge, no other blockchain's done?
We are combining a web miner with merge mining. We are taking the hash rate of all the applications and websites in the world and providing it to all the other blockchains that exist, or potentially at least.
And you're monetizing it. So hash rate is really being, redressed. It's been reassessed, reinvigorated, and it's been done in a blockchain-centric way so that we can start to capitalize on hash rate. I wish you all the very best, Reggie, as you start to move into this in the very near future, this IEO. I do hope it's successful for you because you have a team that is tech-driven and certainly want to build a real deal business that has true utility. And that's why I wanted to talk to you. So I do appreciate it. And we'll catch up if you'd have me again to really explore, and break down different parts of your project and your startup. So we can explore what value is, for example, of the merge mining alone, of the publishing aspect, of the developers in the future. So we can come to better understand all the different facets, in detail.
It sounds good. It was great for you to have me on. It was great to, kind of get in the nitty gritty, at least to some extent, about everything we're doing. I love talking about Gathar and the new things we're doing. And for sure, I would love to speak to you again anytime, discuss the updates, post IEO or whatever in a couple of months, see what's going on, the new developers, what people are building. This excites me. This is my passion. I love it.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that it is. You're leading out something that is innovative and hopefully here for decades beyond. So once again, Reggie, you're the CEO of Gathar. If you'd like to know more, make sure that you look below. There'll be links for you to explore more, do your own research. This is a speculative market. None of this is financial advice, but certainly it's all about making sure that we know what tech is coming, what tech is driving new innovative thinking, and more importantly, innovative doing. It's all about making sure there's praxis on the blockchain. Until then, Reggie, thank you very much for your time and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Brad. It was great being on.
You're welcome, mate.